Okay, my name's Lanny Hubbard, and I'm the treasurer at present for the church here at St. Michael and All Angels. I've been warden a few times, and so we kind of recycle our responsibilities, but currently I'm the treasurer and I guess probably the chair of the cemetery committee. Peter's on the cemetery committee as well, and a few other people, so we try our best to keep the cemetery looking good. Today I'm going to talk about a few things. I've got a little agenda here. So to talk about the view of our grounds, a brief history of the church and the cemetery, then talk about some more details of the cemetery, some of the notable interments, and our Gone But Not Forgotten publication that's being passed around. Our outdoor worship area, which is a work in progress. It's been underway for a few years now, and if you haven't had a chance to visit it, you're most welcome to at any time. It includes a platform that is a sort of a stage that can be used for performances and has an altar on it, and then there's also a labyrinth. And then I'll talk about some of our upcoming events, and then take any questions that you may have. Not sure how long I have to speak, but...
We'll cut you off when you get...
Okay.
Yeah.
So for this group, this won't be news to you where we're located, but first of all, a high-level map showing, and the dot, the red dot shows where we're situated. And then an aerial view with showing the plot lines, the lot lines. And looking down, this is, I think this is done by Google. I'm not sure how these are taken, but anyway, it's a view from above. And then a little bit closer down, with some markings there, you can see the parking lot, the rectory, the church itself, and hidden in the trees down near the bottom of the picture, you can see where it says hall there, and then off to the right on the picture, the outdoor worship area, which again you can't see from this level, and the labyrinth, they're down in the trees, which makes it quite nice in the summer when it's hot. It's about, I don't know, good 10 or 15 degrees Fahrenheit cooler down in that area, so it's quite pleasant. Get my mouse here. So a brief history of the parish. In 1860, it's the start of everything. The clergy of Christ Church Cathedral and St. Luke's Cedar Hill started this parish as a mission. In 1883, so the congregation met in the Lake District School. In 1883, fire burned the school down. It took only 8 months for the residents of Royal Oak to complete construction of a new church building. And Bishop Hills, the first Anglican bishop of the Diocese of British Columbia, dedicated the church building with a font donated by Mrs. Hills. In 1892, St. Michael's became a parish in its own right, no longer a mission. And in 1901, the start of monthly morning service allayed the concerns about insufficient Sunday attendance. It's funny, in 1924, we still have concerns about insufficient Sunday attendance. And we do have regular, not only monthly, but weekly services. In 1906, the construction of the cemetery got completed, and the first burial there, and I'll talk more later about the first person that was buried in the cemetery. In 1912, the first parish guild was established, and also in that year, we got a bell, a church bell that was is in our bell tower. And construction of the first rectory started in 1913. In 1922, Bishop Schofield dedicated the new hall, constructed at a cost of $2,500, if you can believe this place was constructed for that amount. In 1929, it was wired for electricity. And in 1939, Bishop Sexton dedicated the stained glass windows in the sanctuary of the church building. And in 1950, St. Michael's became fully self-funding. So even though it became a parish of its own before, it was an assisted parish. In 1954, an extension was completed on the church at a cost of $14,000. You can see prices were going up by between building the hall and building the extension on the church. And in 1958, a pipe organ was installed that had been donated by St. Matthias Church. And the bell tower was moved and reset on a new foundation, and a new rectory was constructed. So it was a busy year in 1958. 1959, I guess we decided the parking lot needed to get paved for the first time. And in 1961, English font from 1718 is donated, and it's located down in the area of our outdoor worship area. In 1963, a different pipe organ was installed that was built by Hugo Spilker, and this is before my time at the parish. I'm not sure who Hugo Spilker was, but Peter may be able to shed some light on that. In 1991, Sally Tuckey became the first woman to serve as a warden in St. Michael's. And in 2008, the first woman priest was appointed at St. Michael's. It's interesting, the evolution and the progress of women's participation and role in the church. I would hazard a guess that these days there's probably more women being ordained to ministry than there are men. And certainly the bishop, our bishop of the diocese, is a woman. And the retiring primate of Canada is a woman. So I think the women have achieved more equality and more in terms of their role in the Anglican Church anyway. In 2019, we started the outdoor worship area in the Labyrinth as part of an initiative called Transforming Futures. And as I say, we continue to work on that. And that served us well during COVID, because we weren't worshiping inside the church. And so services were held in the outdoor worship area, and not a lot of people attended, but they were filmed and then broadcast. So that worked quite well. So I'm going to talk now about the Gone But Not Forgotten publication, which is being circulated. This is a document which we started about a year ago, and it's intended to provide a little bit of the history of the cemetery, showing the mapping, and then building on the information of people, folks that are buried in the cemetery. We've managed to find information about the first person that was buried. I'll talk about that in a minute. And quite a lot. So we're able to find information quite often on the internet and obituaries and so on. But if you have relatives that are buried in the cemetery and you want to contribute to this document, that saves us having to go looking for the information. So we welcome that. So to show you in terms of the cemetery, the mapping, which is part of this project, these were the original hand-drawn maps that we had up until about a year ago, showing the large area. Oh, didn't mean to go to the next one already. Showing the large main area where the full body burial plots were located, and then areas that are in between the large areas that were, and I'm told this story by Peter, the original hearses were drawn by a team of horses, and so they had to have room for the team of horses to turn around. And so some of the spacing between rows of the graves, some of the spaces were wider than others. So in those wide areas, we have been able to create small plots for urn burials. And so these other drawings to the right were representing the various urn burial plots. So about 2 years ago, I thought, okay, we need to, and these maps were getting increasingly tattered and worn, as you can imagine. So I thought we need to get this digitized so we don't lose all this record. And so I created a digital version of this. This is looking at the whole site of the cemetery. You can see the church to the left, and the hall is down. You see where those numbers 6 and 7 are? The hall is just down below that, so where we're sitting right now. So the colored ones, the green list, that's all the urn burial plots along there. The blue areas and this other green area and the light blue over here, these are all urn burial areas. And there's a little pink area here. And this map is done in Adobe, and so you can zoom in on it. And I'll just go to that for a minute and show you. So when I move the mouse around, can you see that there's a pop-up?
Yes.
Okay. So it as you move over, it tells you who the plot belongs to, or it's inhabited by. And the little squares are a link to the headstone. So if I click on this one, for example, and it might take a minute to download it here because the internet in this little room is not very fast. But, there we are. Okay, so for each plot, you can bring up the information about who's buried there, the details, and then click on it, it'll bring up a picture of the headstone. So if we go over and we zoom in over on these plots over here to so we can zoom in on this group of urns. I know that Barbara's family, parents, okay, on there, see that popped up? And if we zoom in a little more. Can everybody see that okay? Okay. And then I'm going to click on the headstone picture for that. Okay. So this took a fair bit of time to create all this, take all the pictures, and what I call ground truth the accuracy. Sometimes, because we also have all these records in an Excel database, and so when I go out and I look, okay, Bloggins should be buried here, and I find, okay, Bloggins isn't buried here. His headstone's somebody else, and maybe it's over here, a couple over. So it was a matter of making the record, making it all adjust, and in the process discovered that through some poor work with the Excel spreadsheet, there had been some errors introduced in that in some areas the last name got moved down a couple rows from the first name and all that. So it was it took a good amount of work to verify all of this, but we've got a good record now. And of course we keep adding it. Not all of these sites or plots are occupied. You can see ones where there's no picture of a headstone. Generally that means that it's not occupied, but it could be reserved. Okay, so like that one, number 27, is reserved by the Bullings family. So they've reserved an urn burial plot in advance and paid for it. So I'm going to just close this and get back to our slideshow. Okay, that was just showing, that's just the link to where it is stored. Okay, some facts about the cemetery. There's 643 interments to date, best as our records can indicate. We have about 150 reservations. And the earliest recorded interment was Octavius Averill in 1906 at the age of 60. And Octavius, for those who've seen the book, he's listed in here. And his headstone is just outside the door here. And so Octavius and his wife Emma, they had quite a challenging life. I've got a few brief facts later on here. So that was the earliest recorded interment. The oldest person when she died was Evelyn Curry in 1966 at age 102. But so far we haven't been able to find any information about her. Other, just the record that we have of her burial. Then we've got three people that are tied for 101. Eleanor DeBoos, who was a longtime member of the parish, Francis Chetwynd, who again, we haven't so far found any information, and then Constance Isherwood, who just died 3 years ago at the age of 101. And Constance is, and she's not in the book yet, but we've got the information and it's going to be in there soon. She was quite interesting. One of the oldest practicing lawyers. She practiced law until basically the day she died.
The last day she did.
Yeah, and she was chancellor for the diocese, the law advisor or legal counsel for the diocese. And interestingly, in her early days, she was a drummer in a 3-person women's band, and they toured around Canada for a while. So quite a, when you get a chance to read her, of course her obituary is quite long, so anyway, we're in the process of incorporating it. The youngest person that died by our records was Bruce Reed at 3 months, and then John Saunders at age 4 months, and Gordon Ralph Heel at age 1 year. Obviously, infant and young children deaths, particularly in long and gone by years. So Octavius, just a few facts about him. As I mentioned, he was the first recorded interment in the newly constructed cemetery in 1906. Him and his wife Emma had 4 children, and they emigrated here to Canada in 1880, and they farmed in the Clan William area. There's quite an extensive write-up about him in the booklet here. It says suffering many hardships. That's a bit of an understatement. Their house burned down twice, and it was just no end of problems. I think their son was killed in a rodeo accident there in Manitoba. Anyway, in 1903, apparently Octavius said he'd had enough of trying to make it go, and that's when they moved to the island and up by Duncan. But we're connected to the parish here. And he died as a result of being thrown by a buggy when the horse spooked when a car went by. So quite a challenging life. So he died in 1906. As I mentioned, Eleanor Dubus was a longtime member of the parish, achieved a ripe old age of 101, and a few brief facts. She was born in Germany and emigrated to Canada in 1971, and they moved to Victoria and she lived in the family house until she was 100 years old, so that's pretty impressive. And then Constance Isherwood, as I mentioned. So the group that she was part of was the Rhythmettes. And I guess after the war, they toured a bit around Canada for a while, but she was the drummer. She graduated in law at the top of her class in 1951, won the Law Society gold medal, and was immediately called to the bar, which is pretty unusual. People normally have to article for a while and before they get called to the bar. And as I mean, she worked until the last day she was alive, and she was chancellor for 30 years, over 30 years. So Margaret Littler, again, there's quite a bit in the booklet about her, but who the hall is named after, she was the fourth child of Reverend Charles Littler, who and Isabel Shaw. And so Reverend Littler was appointed rector here. He wasn't the healthiest person, and so Marjorie she had to help him a lot. It says he started his car, which was in those days a cranked a car, pumped the water, chopped wood, kept the chickens, and cooked meals. So it was kind of like the family duties. If that wasn't enough, she started the Sunday school and initially had 5 pupils, and it grew to 105. Can you imagine? I mean, she recruited some assistants to help with the Sunday school, but 105 kids, and the older teenagers, I guess they came on Saturdays, and she ran programs on Saturdays. They did all sorts of things with, and so she was very busy. She did the janitorial work in the church. And one of the funny things is there's apparently an underground stream that runs through the graveyard, which is probably why there's all this nice treed area down. You know, the trees get their moisture from somewhere. But apparently there's an underground stream, which is supported by this story, because apparently when the graves were dug, full body graves in those days, in some of the areas they would fill up with water. And so it was her job, she said, to jump down into the grave and pail out the water, as she said, to make it more comfortable for the incoming occupant. This information, by the way, I found from a biography that was written about her, so I was quite fortunate to be able to find this. So the land originally that the hall is built on didn't belong to the parish. So she went and talked to the farmer that owned this land and somehow convinced him. It's not clear whether anything was paid for it or if she talked him into just donating this chunk of land that the hall sits on, and goes down a little ways down the lot. She drew up the plans. There's no indication that she had any particular training or education in design, engineering, architecture, or anything. She drew up the plans, which were approved for construction, and the hall got built for $2,500 and dedicated in 1922. And so it's named after her, the Marjorie Littler Hall. And amazing, amazing woman. And you know, and people wonder about, well, what's the load occupancy of the hall? And so a few years ago we thought, oh, we'll have an engineer come and have a look. And oh, I don't know, you got any plans? No. Anyway, we're not too worried about the structural integrity, because when you go down underneath, the beams that are underneath this thing are pretty substantial. And but anyway, the engineer wasn't prepared to declare or make any kind of estimate, because without any plans to look at. So it's kind of interesting. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the outdoor worship area. And as I mentioned earlier, this got started as part of our Transforming Futures initiative, which was a diocese-wide initiative of the bishop of the day for renewal and various things. So we had meetings in the parish and we talked about what we should have as our project. And it was the outdoor worship area. And so these bullet points just signify some of what we wanted to achieve in this. So a spiritual rest stop, a place that, and I often talk about people you know, driving when you go on a road trip, and you'll come along and you see a rest stop ahead, place to pull off and have a rest, a break. Some of the ones down in the United States, especially, they're set up, serve you coffee at the rest stops. But anyway, our idea is people, if they want to pull in and just wander about the property, they're very welcome to do so. Place for outdoor activities, worship, teaching, and meditation. The prayer path labyrinth is particularly focused on the opportunity to meditate as you navigate the pattern. We wanted to retain the historical and natural beauty of the site, obviously. Weren't interested in planting a bunch of plants that were going to need to be watered all the time. And we wanted to make it easy access, and we're continuing to add to that. We built a easy access ramp down last summer. Memorial benches to sit on and rest throughout. And we've created an initial brochure, but the idea was that people could have this brochure. Originally thought a head site, and you walk around and it'll guide, you know, it's kind of a guided tour of here's some historical people, their graves and so on. I don't know if we'll ever do the headset thing, but we have created a brochure. And people said we should have wood chips or gravel for trails and so on. So these were just brains, you know, in terms of the planning that went into. And as I say, it's not completed, it's a work in progress. So just a few pictures. Where the labyrinth is located, have any of you or might have had an opportunity to go and visit the labyrinth? Yeah? Well, encourage you to do so. If it's a nice afternoon, it's just up that way. And so this is the construction of it. That was my son-in-law working the little bobcat here. And that's what it looks like. So it's a pattern, you enter, and you have to wander around you keep going. There's 4 sectors to it, but there's only one way in and one way out, unless you step over the stones or the bricks. So the idea is you go in there and walk the pattern, and you can meditate. And the kids have a fun, of course. They tend to get about halfway around and say, okay, that's enough of that, and hop over the bricks. Here's the platform that was built for, this picture was just taken this spring after I did power washing of it. So you can tell it was early spring and everything's quite wet still, but it needed a good cleaning. And we've put out there now under a cover is the altar, which was the altar. The Anglican camp on Thetis Island was closed a few years ago, and so the altar at that camp, we acquired that, and so that's the altar that we use out there. In the winter, we put it in storage. We made some seats we had to cut down one tree, so we cut it in sections and split it to make some rustic kind of benches out there. Of course, we have the other benches, the purchased ones, but kids particularly like sitting on these ones. Here's kind of a picture of the setting. There's one of the benches up there. Here's a picture of the altar. So that's kind of an overview of the cemetery, some of the highlights of the folks that are buried out there, some of the notables, and as I say, that will be increasing as we add to the book. There's already many more in the book than what I've mentioned today. Wanted just to touch on some of our upcoming events in case any of you might be interested in them. We will be having, well, our regular services, of course, 8:30 and 10:30 every Sunday. But during the summer, we're going to be having outdoor evening prayer, half hour between 5 to 5:30 on June 26th, July 10th, and July 24th, which will be just basically readings and music held in the outdoor worship area. And because of the time, we say, bring along a picnic supper and just hang out. Once we get into the hot weather, as I say, it's really nice down and quite shady and nice and cool there. We have a education program coming up about Alzheimer's and dementia, again, which is open to the public. We do want people to pre-register because the last one we did of these a couple months ago about the birds of Victoria, we were overwhelmed. There was over 100 people came. We were standing room only in here. We had to race around to gather up chairs. So if you're interested in an excellent speaker talking about Alzheimer's, dementia, and some of the work that's being done on that, Dr. Pat Gunton, and I'd say you're welcome to attend that. You just have to phone the office and reserve a spot. And all of our upcoming events can be viewed on our website, which I've included here. Our website is www.St. Mike Victoria. The rector's email, the secretary, how you reach her, the phone, and then emails for the wardens and myself. So I thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you today, and I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Any questions?
I just want to make a comment about the benches, you know, and the outdoor chapel from Camp Columbia. Because we have property on Thetis, and I also went to Camp Columbia. But those were the benches that we had in the outdoor chapel.
That was the kind of benches,
yeah,
exactly, and that's why we.
That's what I thought. You know, to duplicate it.
Now, adults don't like to sit on those so much. Kids are happy with it, but adults say, "No, it's kind of prickly," or you know.
The one thing with the altar in Camp Columbia, because it's kind of like a cathedral with all those trees. It's just a beautiful spot. And the sun always came through on the morning service to shine right on that altar, the way it was placed.
Yeah.
And it would just filter through the trees and just zoom in. It was such a peaceful place to be.
Right. And if you haven't been out to look at it,
we've been out there. Yeah.
It's,
The same.
you know, we sited it so that with the trees in the background and everything, we spent quite a few hours sort of, okay, which way should this face and whereabouts exactly should we build this?
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it reminded me when we sat there the other day, my husband and I, and it was the same sort of feeling as it was at Camp Columbia where that altar was, to come through the trees and the light.
Exactly.
So it's captured there as well.
Exactly, yeah.